Welcome back to the channel. This game features Nigel against Edmar Mednis, an American grandmaster who famously beat Bobby Fischer in the US Championship in the early 60s. The game was played in the Brighton International Tournament in December 1983 in the third round. The game started with a Sicilian defence. And becomes into the Richter-Rauzer variation. This is all standard stuff. Here, Nigel decides to defend the e-pawn with a queen, which is a slightly weird, puts it on a slightly weird square. An essential push in the centre to claim some space. This allows trade some minor pieces. And an interesting pawn sack. A much better move here would have been to play pawn takes pawn. Choice the queen would have to move and trade the bishops. And white has a dangerous pass pawn and a slight advantage. However, in the game, Nigel chose to pin the bishop. And Mednis now has a good position, even though he's going to lose his bishop. He's going to gain a lot of central pass pawns on the queen side. Nigel accepts the challenge. An unnecessary pawn push on the king side, hinting at a potential king side attack, but ignoring the queen side, which is potentially dangerous. The engine likes the black position at this point, but not the next move, which seems to lose all the advantage. Nigel now can solidify the centre. This looks a fairly weird looking move. It defends the pawn chain, but leaves white with a backward g-pawn. White immediately threatens checkmate, plus also puts pressure on the g-pawn that's just moved. Nigel defends the checkmate with the only reasonable move. And black locks down the centre. A very double-edged position. Black has a slight advantage, but obviously white has the extra bishop. Key moment in the game, Nigel offers the g-pawn, which ultimately black declines, but I think he's quite unable to be able to take it. White has to defend the h-pawn. And obviously black cannot take the rook on h3 because the rook takes g7 check. But after this position, I think black is better and would would have been able to take the pawn without too much trouble. However, he didn't. He decided to play rook to b3, which I think leaves white with a clear advantage once the queens come off. Now white does have the extra bishop, and black only has 2 pawns for it. Pushing on the king side. A strange move from black, which seems to just blunder the a pawn once the capture on f5. The black pawns are still very strong in the centre and still need to be guarded carefully. A nice blockading move from the bishop, defending the pawn, but black position seems to have disintegrated slightly, and white is definitely better now. I think for the rest of the game, white just gradually pushes the a pawn up the board, and it's a matter of technique. Black's reduced to trying to push the pawns in the centre, but white can quite easily blockade it. An interesting move from Nigel, pushing the pawn in the centre, offering the e pawn for the d pawn. I think if black loses the d pawn and then the c pawn follows, obviously the game is lost. Move from Nigel. Black decides he has to take the e pawn, but as mentioned before, I think losing the 2 central pawns, black position is lost now. The a pawn is going to decide the game. More trades can only help white. And now the a pawn pushes. And the king's going to march up the ball to shepherd the a pawn home. This is the final move of the game. As mentioned before, the a pawn is going to decide the game. An interesting game. The middle game could quite easily have gone well for black if he decided to take the pawn off on g3, but ultimately decided not to. Let's put Nigel on 2 out of 3. A strong start to the tournament. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, bye.